Good morning, or should I say great morning, because today we're going to go hunt down a whole bunch of trains. Now, if you haven't figured it out, my favorite railroad is the Iowa Interstate Railroad. That runs from Council Bluffs, Iowa to Blue Island, Illinois. But my second favorite railroad, that is the CSX. I live on a CSX line, but it's not really the busiest of CSX lines. All I get are a whole bunch of locals. I don't really get to see the big shot intermodals. I don't get to see the long distance manifests. So that's what I want to do today. I'm going to go out to the eastern part of Illinois onto the CSX Woodland subdivision. That is the line that carries all of the southbounds out of Chicago that are going down to Jacksonville, Atlanta, Nashville, Birmingham. So it's quite busy. And I don't really get a chance to railfan that line all that much, so I'm very excited. But first, I heard about a whole bunch of trains running on the New Rock subdivision. That's this line next to me right here. And I want to try and get a few of those before I head out. So come along and let's see if we can have some fun. The second I entered Ottawa, Illinois, I heard a horn in the distance, but it wasn't on the CSX. To my surprise, this light power move on the Illinois Railway was heading west through town on its way to the U.S. Silica Mine.
Defect detector. Milepost 51.3. No defects. No defects. Total axle 672. End of transmission.
I knew L397 was running late today, and while I was getting gas in Minooka, I heard the nearby defect detector go off. I tried to chase it back west to the Tabler Road crossing, but I didn't make it in time. So, I jumped over to Interstate 80 in an attempt to get ahead of it. I got to Seneca, Illinois just in time to see its headlight rounding the curve east of town. After it stopped to set out a few cars in the yard, it got underway.
Okay, so the other eastbound local, L394, is still switching out in Marseilles, And I don't really want to wait for it because getting 397 took way longer than expected. It's already 2:30 in the afternoon and I still have an hour drive ahead of me. So I'm just going to cut my losses and head over to the UP Villa Grove / CSX Woodland Subdivision joint line.
I had a fairly long and fairly boring drive ahead of me, but thankfully I had an audiobook to pass the time. Today's audiobook is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I read this years ago before the movie came out, and I remembered enjoying it, so this time I wanted to see if it still held up. It definitely does. Another strong recommendation if sci-fi is your thing. I arrived at Woodland Junction just south of Watseka, Illinois, where the CSX Woodland Sub combines with the Union Pacific Villa Grove Sub to form a double-track joint line into Chicago. I sat here for a solid hour and saw nothing. I got tired of staring at empty rails, so I headed south on Illinois Route 1 toward Danville, making sure to grab my dinner at the first Casey's I saw. I got a slice of pepperoni pizza and a breaded pork tenderloin sandwich. Not the most glamorous meal, but it'll do in a pinch, especially if you want it cheap and fast.
It's almost 6 p.m. I still haven't seen a single train since 397 earlier today. I've been following the CSX Woodland Sub south toward Danville, but every signal I've passed so far has been dark. I haven't heard anything from the dispatcher. I'm hopeful that I can get maybe one, or if I'm lucky, 2 trains before the sun sets, but I'm not that optimistic about it. We'll see.
I arrived at the south end of CSX's Danville yard to discover that the absolute signal here was displaying all red in both directions, meaning nothing was lined. Lucky me. I was determined to see something on the CSX this evening, so I crossed the state line and kept going south on Indiana 63, where I caught wind of a southbound in Montezuma. I had to chase it all the way to Terre, Haute before I got ahead of it, but finally, after nearly 7 hours without a train, I see this southbound E081, an empty coal drag from the Duke Energy Power Plant in Cayuga, bound for Oaktown, Indiana. Not long after, I crossed the tracks and saw a green for a northbound coming off the CE&D sub. After meeting that E081 in Baker Siding, the daily northbound intermodal I-128 makes an appearance, entering the final leg of its journey from Atlanta to Chicago.
So, after all day of driving and seeing nothing, I finally end up in Terre, Haute, where I get a meet. I get a southbound coal train and the northbound I-128. Two trains I was hoping to get today, so I'm very glad that I managed to pull that off. It's now 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock back where I live. And I got about 3 hours of driving ahead of me, so I think I'm going to call it here. I got 4 trains today, which is a lot less than a whole bunch like I was expecting, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you just got to take what you can get, and honestly, I'm still pretty happy I got to spend a whole day out just driving around, seeing some trains, and I can't wait for the next time. Thank you for watching.